Hello, this is Daniel Lawrence Smith, Associate Director of Training at Out and Equal Workplace Advocates. Welcome to our 2016 Virtual Summit Series, the very best of the 2015 Out and Equal Workplace Summit. Today's subject will be straight talk from teens about having not-so-straight parents. This is a broadcast audio call, and the call will last for 75 minutes. It will be recorded and available as a digital resource after the call. And we will be live tweeting, and we encourage you to participate as well using the hashtag VirtualSummit16. A few announcements at Out and Equal. The next two sessions of our Virtual Summit series will be on February 16th and March 17th. February 16th will be a case study from our friends at Wells Fargo and Marriott on LGBT inclusive marketing. And March 17th will be our good friends from the Walt Disney Company. February 24th, we will begin our global webinar series with a focus on China. And February 25th will be our monthly town call on voluntary self-ID in a global workplace. March 3rd will be the official webinar kickoff to our 2016 Out and Equal Workplace Summit. And then we're very excited, March 1st, 8th, and 15th, to present our three-part Building Bridges series, which is our core cultural competency towards creating LGBT inclusive workplaces. The March 1st session will be free, and the March 8th and 15th is a fee-for-service at the bargain price of $69.95, a great resource to bring into your workplaces. March 22nd through 24th will be our executive forum held at the Palace Hotel right here in San Francisco, and that culminates the evening of March 24th with Momentum, Out and Equal's annual leadership celebration and gala dinner, also at the Palace Hotel here in San Francisco. March 5th, 12th, and 19th will be our Train the Trainer certification course for any of you who are interested in becoming Out and Equal certified trainers. The training certification is good for 2 years and gives you many, many resources here at Out and Equal, including our Trainers Forum. A prerequisite for that is to attend the Building Bridges Core Cultural Competency. And then October 4th through 7th will be the 2016 Out and Equal Workplace Summit held at the Swan and Dolphin at the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando, Florida. Important to note with that, Tuesday, October 4th will be our day-long leadership seminars, and the conference will run from Tuesday to Friday. Normally it's a Monday through Thursday, so please make a note of that. We'd like to get a pulse of who is on the line with us today, so we have a poll. And the question is, what is your role within your company? And feel free to check any and all that apply. And then once you've put that in, go ahead and hit submit. Okay, good. So you'll see the answers coming in. And we have a lot of LGBTQA employees, a lot of folks who are involved in their employee resource or business resource groups, training and professional development. Okay, about 50% LGBT employees, and about 40% who are involved in their employee resource groups. So that's great to see. And the next question is specifically around LGBT parenting. So are you an LGBT parent, an ally, or straight parent? Perhaps you're the parent of an LGBT child or children. Maybe you're thinking of becoming a parent, or something else. And if it is something else, please feel free to chat that in. Okay, and we're seeing about 42% of LGBT parents, which is great to see. Thank you for dialing in. About 20% of you are thinking of becoming a parent, so good luck and congratulations. And then we also have about 13% ally parents, and about 9% of you who are parents of LGBT children, so thank you for that. Okay, someone's leading a support group for significant others, families, friends, and allies of trans people. Fantastic. Step-parent and grandparent. Wonderful. LGBT godmother. I love it. I'm an LGBT godfather, so I understand that. Wonderful. Thank you all for your participation. With that, we have a fantastic group of panelists today who are volunteering their time, and I now turn the call over to them.
Hi, I'm Sydney Schweitzer, and in addition to be participating in today's discussion, I will also be our moderator. So you might be wondering why a group of teenagers are presenting their own workshop at a forum like this. We've done this several times now, and we are the only youth to have ever done this before. You can actually thank Hurricane Sandy for that. Several years ago, my brothers and I were on site at Summit in Baltimore when Hurricane Sandy hit. Out and Equal had prepared a featured panel of adult children of LGBT families to speak. However, the panelists, due to the storm, could not be found. So Out and Equal knew we were on site and were in desperate of need for panelists. So they asked us if we could be the panelists for the featured panel. So with about 10 minutes warning, as 13-year-olds, my brothers and I took the stage. At last minute, the regular panelists did end up showing up, but they invited us to stay on stage with us. What happened next is really interesting. The audience did not want to talk at all about workplace issues. They wanted to talk to the young kids, and they wanted to know what it was like to be kids of LGBT families. The reviews were really high, and the surveys indicated that they wanted to see us come back. However, rather than do it their way, as young kids, we thought we knew better what the audience really wanted to know. So our parents, both of whom had been presenters here at Out and Equal for years, challenged us to write our own workshop proposal. So we did. And this workshop has now been presented at Out and Equal as well as several other conferences several times. While maybe it isn't obvious to some, this topic is a serious workplace issue. If your employers or coworkers are worried about their kids, they're going to be lousy workers. So understanding these issues is really a critical part of meeting the needs of LGBT people in the workplace. Work and life integration is an important subject these days. Each time we put together one of these workshops, my brothers and I look for other teenagers with interesting stories and diverse perspectives to join us. And this group might be one of the best combinations we've put together yet. I'm going to switch to the next slide. So before I get into introductions, I'd like to quickly go over what our agenda is for today so you know what to expect. First, we're going to do some welcome and introductions, and then we're going to go into several of our pre-prepared moderator questions. And third, we will be going to the audience to ask you guys questions. We'll be playing a trailer, and then we'll do a quick closing. So our objectives for today is to provide you with an understanding of what it's like to be a kid with LGBT parents. We aren't just allies. This is an important point that is lost on many people. While most of us identify as cisgender and straight, we often experience the same discrimination and prejudice as LGBT people do. Oppressive laws affect us in many ways as much as our parents. Second, to share real-life strategies for dealing with bullying, self-esteem, role models, being out, etc., with parents or prospective parents. 3, to create a safe environment so audience members can feel free to ask any questions. We've literally heard it all. We can handle anything you throw at us. If we don't like a question, we won't answer it. Just ask anything. 4, to cover a lot of material of interest to most quickly, then focus on specific concerns of this particular audience. And 5th, to share the positive outcomes and advantages of being raised by LGBT parents. We may be biased, but we believe the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. So for our first group of panelists, I'd like to talk about the Donaldsons. Joy and Glenn Donaldson are 17-year-old twins who were born into a heterosexual Mormon family. Their father came out and divorced their mother when the children were 5. He left the church, but their mother did not. Their parents currently have shared custody in San Diego. Next is the Hawks. This is almost 17-year-old Jordan Hawk. The birthday party is next week. You are all invited. Jordan is our only panelist who is on the LGBT spectrum. The rest of us identify as cisgendered and straight. Jordan never knew her Jamaican father, and her Puerto Rican mother died when she was 11. Jordan has been in foster care for several years. A previous adoption was canceled when the adoptive parents found out Jordan was dating a girl. For most of the last year, Jordan has been living with her new parents, whom she credits for saving her life. Her mother identifies as genderqueer. Her father identifies as a trans man. Jordan herself identifies as gender nonconforming and pansexual. Their family lives in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and the birthday party is also an adoption celebration party since the adoption will be finalized very soon. And then lastly is my own family. I'm Sydney, and my brothers Lucas and Ian. And we are 17-year-old triplets. We have two moms. One is lesbian, and the other is bi/pansexual. She's still deciding. We have an anonymous donor, and in vitro fertilization helped us come into the world. We have since met our donor, as well as 11 of our confirmed 21 half-siblings, and we live on a farm in rural western Pennsylvania. So you can really see that all of our different panelists come from very different parts of the United States that bring in a lot of different perspectives depending on the regions we come from. I'm going to start our conversation today by asking our panelists to answer a short list of the most commonly asked questions we tend to get while doing these. We hope this breaks the ice and sets the tone for you that you really can ask this group of panelists anything. At least half of our session we will be spending answering your questions. Between answering my questions and answering your questions, we hope to cover as much information of interest to most as possible, as well as meet the individual interests and needs of this particular audience. So I will start with our first question. Many people assert that a child needs a mother and a father. Without that, you won't have necessary role models. Do you, to the panel, think we have adequate role models? Who would like to answer this one?
This is Lucas, and I can go ahead and start with this one. So let's first start with the assumption that a parental figure feels like their child needs a mother and a father figure. In this case, from our experience, we've found that you can have those quote-unquote mother and father figures. You can find them anywhere in the world. It doesn't have to be your immediate family. We have this joke amongst the panelists that we don't live in Lesbianistan. So we're not just surrounded by LGBT people. We're not just surrounded by people who don't necessarily identify as cisgendered. So if you really believe that a child needs a mother figure and a father figure, there are other places in society to find those role models without them being in your nuclear family. Now, on the other hand, the opinion that I'm of is that the traits that you get from a mother and a father figure don't necessarily have to come from a mother and a father. Those traits that we associate with a father figure are things like courage and strength and leadership skills, and then with a mother, it's things like being nurturing and kind. Those characteristics can come from anybody. It doesn't matter what's between your legs when it comes to things like good character traits. And that's exactly what these are. They're just good character traits. They're not male traits. They're not female traits. They're just traits that are meant to develop a good character in a child. So do we have adequate role models? Absolutely. And it's not because of their gender or their lack of gender. It's because they feed us the good character traits that help us build our strong characters.
This is Sydney again. I completely agree with what Lucas was saying. In many ways, I feel like gender has been a construct that people have created, and what people really should be concerned about is that the children have strong and sensitive influences. A man can be both a leader and a nurturer. A woman can be both tough and kind. My mom taught me how to do my own makeup and how to do drywall. I feel like any given person can raise a child properly, and it doesn't really have anything to do with what gender they are.
This is Joy. If I could just add on to the end of it. Both my brother and I, we grew up with a mom and a dad. But for us, having a mom and a dad doesn't necessarily mean that you have like the role model of a mom and the role model of a dad. For us, we don't have the best relationship with our mom, so it was kind of more like our dad was the role model, and our sister was more of a role model, like we call her mom. So just because you have a mom and a dad doesn't mean that those are necessarily like good people that you should kind of like follow their ideas. You can kind of find role models in anyone, like a teacher or a coach. So just because you don't have a mom and a dad doesn't mean that you're lacking role models.
So I'm going to quickly switch to the next question because I saw a question come into the chat that I feel like will be answered by one of the moderator questions. And I'll go through and we can answer all of the chat questions once we're through with the, I believe, 5 moderator questions, because some of them actually, the answers to them will cover the questions you're asking in the chat. Jennifer said that they live in a fairly conservative area and her daughter is the need to keep them closeted from her friends and how you can make her feel more comfortable. And I feel like this next question kind of will answer that. It's how has your age at any given time affected your experience living in an LGBTQ plus family? Was it different in elementary school versus middle school versus high school? Some people think that high school years have to be the worst. Is that true? I can start off by answering this question from my perspective, and I would have to say, though I've never faced any severe bullying, I would have to say for me that it surprisingly was actually elementary school, slightly into middle school, that was the toughest for me. A lot of people, I feel like maybe this comes from movies or something, assume that the worst bullying you could ever face is in high school, but that's not always necessarily the case. When I was in 5th grade, I was kicked off of a softball team for having gay parents because the coach didn't want people like that around his daughter. This caused me to be a little bit more closeted because I realized everyone's not accepting, everyone's not going to see from the perspective that I do with my family. So I did become more closeted. I wouldn't immediately just tell people because I realized it could have a negative outcome for me. And Jennifer, I feel like to kind of answer your question on this one, my parents, when I did this, were completely supportive of me being in the closet. They had their time in their life to come through with coming out of the closet when they were comfortable with that, and they also gave me the time to come out myself. And generally, if you try to force anything or you try to make them want to be more comfortable, they're going to just kind of distance themselves. So I think my best advice for that situation is to just let her come around to it. And it is tough living in a very conservative area. I live in literally one of the most conservative areas I could think of. And generally, I just grew confidence as I got older. And I decided, you know what, I really don't care what people think. But yeah, it is a tough situation, but I say just give it time. And if anyone else would like to answer this question, you can go ahead.
Hi, this is Glenn. In response to the question, my dad came out to Joy and I when we were really, really young, and back then when he did come out, I didn't fully understand like what gay meant or like what gay was. So it wasn't a very like concerning issue for me. It was just kind of, oh, he is, or, oh, you know, he was, and that sort of stuff. And there was kind of a pushback from my mom, but that's because of her religious background. And I never saw it that way. I always thought as, oh, it's my dad, and I'm going to love him no matter what. In response to like the bullying throughout elementary and middle school and high school, our schools, we never had a lot of that. There was not a lot of straight out bullying, but there was, I guess, some persecution from like some of my religious friends at the time. They were kind of like, oh, your dad is gay, like you're going to hell, that sort of stuff. But there wasn't a lot of like public ridicule like you see in most of the movies. It was kind of, I told my friends, and they were like, oh, that's fine, whatever you want to do, you do you, we'll still be your friends. And I was like, oh, it was great. So there wasn't a lot of like public bullying, again, like you'll see in movies. It was kind of it just was. It was just a thing, and then you just moved on with life.
So I can kind of answer this one as well. It's as far as when it was the hardest time. It's definitely not high school. Like Sydney said, it was towards the upper middle end of elementary school. But funny enough, the beginning of beginning of elementary school was actually the easiest for me, at least, because when you're really young and you tell people that, oh, I have 2 moms, everyone's always like, oh man, I wish I had 2 moms. I get twice as many cookies then, and they don't really they don't see anything wrong with it. And then when they get older, they start just regurgitating the hateful comments that maybe they learned from their parents, or maybe they learned for some radical on television. And that's when they start developing this skewed sense of inappropriateness. And it really just goes to show that, this is a small tangent, but like children aren't born hateful. They aren't born looking at other humans saying, oh, you're wrong and I'm right. That they only develop that sense of what's inappropriate because of what other people have told them is inappropriate.
I think if anyone else would like to answer this, let me know. I'm going to move on to the next question. So the next question is, do you question your sexual orientation or gender identity more because you have same-sex parents? Did you have sexual orientation or gender identity confusion issues? Jordan, I feel like you're a fairly good person to answer this question.
Hi everyone, it's Jordan. So my dad is a trans masculine guy, and if I questioned my sexual orientation or gender identity more, I did simply because I was allowed to. I've known my parents for just about 1.5 years now, and I came into the foster care system at 14. So from 14 all up until before that, I had really homophobic, transphobic, biological family. Therefore, I wasn't really allowed to express my sexual orientation or really explore my gender identity or any of that. With my new parents, they really just told me that it's okay to be whatever you are, and if you don't know, it's okay not to know until you find out, as long as you never stop looking for what you are or stop trying to find who you are. I identify as a pansexual, panromantic, gender nonconforming person, and so yeah, I really think I expressed or explored my sexual orientation and gender identity more simply because I knew I was going to be able to do so without being infringed upon or judged.
I can also answer this one in that like we actually talk about this a lot in that while both me, my brother, and my sister all consider ourselves to be straight, we were given the ability to be whatever we felt like we were. We never really had extensive questioning of it because we could just be what we wanted to be. Like we were allowed to question it.
So this is Glenn again. Since like my dad again, he came out to my sister and I when we were very young, so I always thought it was kind of like, oh, if my dad is gay, is there a possibility that I might be gay? And the rest of the panelists will know this Abercrombie story. I was at a mall with my dad one time, and we were kind of, walking around doing some window shopping, that sort of stuff. And we walked, like, across an Abercrombie store, and, they have these, these giant, like, billboards and, like, posters and, like, walls of, like, half-naked guys, abs, tan, that sort of stuff. And so I thought, well, if my dad is gay, could I be gay? And so I stopped in front of the store, and I looked at one of these posters, and I waited. I just kind of sat there for about 20 seconds and waited. Eventually, my dad saw that I wasn't next to him. He kind of ran back, and he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, nothing. So I guess for me, at least, it did kind of make me question if I was or would be or anything like that. But, in the end, you can't really, you can't choose. It just kind of is. And for me, that wasn't it. So, I mean, there is definitely maybe a question or, an influence, but you're just going to know. It has nothing to do if you're, your parents are gay or not. It just kind of is.
And if I could add one thing to the end of that. When my dad came out, Glenn and I were 8, and you just saw this huge change in him. He seemed so much happier, and, he had more hope in life. He was just in a better mood all the time than he had been before. And if anything, seeing my dad like that and seeing him, finally know who he was and being able to be comfortable with who he was, that made me think, oh, well, if my dad can be comfortable with who he is, then I can be comfortable with whoever I am, regardless of what that is.
This is Sydney again. So with our family, my mom was always super open to whoever we wanted to date or whatever gender identity we wanted to be. From a very young age, every time when talking about prospective dates or people we were interested in, she would always say he/she, as to include everyone we could possibly want to date. And at a certain age, I just told her, you don't have to say both. It's only he, don't worry. And so I think that did help a lot with them being just open and accepting to whoever we wanted to date or be. Yeah, so I think that's pretty well answered. I'm going to move up to the next question. This next question is, how can a parent help a child cope with bullying/discrimination? We have linked right here Collage, which is a really great resource for looking for specifically children of LGBT parents. I highly suggest to go check it out. But to answer the question, I think I'm going to start off with saying kids are mean. If not about this, it's going to be about something else. Worrying as much about whether your kids have the right shoes as you do about having LGBT parents, because it really isn't that big of a deal. The point is, you will face many parenting issues that are just that, parenting issues, not necessarily LGBT parenting issues. Bullying is one of those things. A lot of parents we've had in the past in these panels will say things like, what about my son being worried about PDA? We will be holding hands in public and my son will be concerned about that. And it's that's not an LGBT issue. He's not worried about his two dads holding hands. He's worried about his parents making out in public, because regardless of if you're gay or straight, that's going to be gross for a kid. So I think a lot of times you have to kind of make sure that it's not necessarily about you being gay. Sometimes it's just about you being a parent. But yeah, so for how you can help a child cope with bullying and discrimination, I think in general it's just always be really supportive of them, to listen to their concerns and try to help them in any way you can. Yeah, anyone else have an answer for it?
I really agree with you. Listening for me is just key when dealing with bullying and or discrimination with a child. I think for a child all throughout elementary to high school, their biggest issue is fitting in and finding their place within their own community. So yes, listening I think is key. Just listen to what your kid has to say, and not just listening, but active listening, looking at their body language, how they react to what you're saying, things like that. And, getting in touch with the school. I mean, there are laws to prevent bullying and discrimination. I think once a parent and the school really synchronize in order to keep a child safe, all is well from there.
So this is Lucas again. And so I made this comment during the panel, and I'm going to say it again here, but the world is a really shitty place sometimes, and there's a lot of really shitty people in it. And not to say that should deter us from trying to change their minds, but changing every single person's mind is a really impossible feat. And so when that kid goes off to school and he's getting harassed, and he comes home and tells you that someone at school told him that his family was somehow lesser than theirs, I think it's the responsibility of the parents to make sure that that kid has a safe place to come home to at home, and so that safe atmosphere is just a constant reminder for him that his family really isn't any lesser, and that those comments that were made at him at school are just they have no backing. Those words can't actually hurt him because he knows himself that his family isn't wrong, and in many ways his family is actually better than those who are speaking ill of an LGBT household.
That's great. Anyone else want to answer the question before I move on? Okay, great. I'm going to go on to the final of the moderator questions, and it is, people worry about the challenges you may face being raised in an LGBTQ plus family, but are there advantages? Anyone want to answer this question?
If I can start this off just kind of on a light note, one advantage for me is that my dad can take me shopping, and he has like an excellent fashion sense, and I think out of all my friends, like, they always want him to come with us when we go shopping because they're like, oh, well, your dad's going to pick out the good stuff and he's going to be honest. So, I mean, like, that's a huge perk.
I think for me,
yeah,
Go ahead.
That's all right. Go ahead.
It's Jordan here. And I think one of the biggest advantages, I think, being a kid from an LGBTQ plus family is really just the confidence it gives you. I'm speaking for myself when I say this. And my parents being out, my dad being a trans man and my mom being a genderqueer person, it's just really empowering to see how they go throughout their daily lives, throughout their communities, and are just really in touch with themselves and how they articulate themselves, and it just really gives me an empowerment. I mean, even this panel itself, I think is one of the great advantages of being a kid from an LGBTQ plus family. The way we can just articulate our needs of ourselves, and not only ourselves, but our family and our community, and just the way we can interact with each other.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is Sydney again. I feel like we have quite a lot of advantages being raised in such a diverse community. We live in a world without gender stereotypes. Those stereotypes are limiting to people, I feel like. I can take out the trash or cook dinner. I can have a doll or wear pink. We tend to have kind of like a heightened awareness and sensitivity to all diversity and inclusion issues. I feel like in general I am more attracted to people who are different, and I connect with everyone, including the weird ones. I don't tend to judge, so I really feel like I get to know people because I'm sort of bored with clones or people who are just obsessed with fitting in. I feel like just by having been raised in an LGBTQ plus family that I'm more likely to question authority and societal norms, realizing that society doesn't always get it right. So yeah, I feel like that's kind of how an advantage for me. Does anyone else have anything else to add before we go into the audience questions? Because I already see that we have several.
Oh, Sydney, can I add something really quick?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, this is Joy. I just wanted to elaborate on one thing that Sydney said. She said that we kind of question more, and I think that that is a huge part of growing up in an LGBTQ plus family. Is that all around you, you may have people saying oh, that your family or your parents are wrong or sinful. My brother and I heard that a lot growing up, half the time in a really religious place, your dad's going to hell. We heard that a lot. But we always kind of knew well, you know what, you're wrong. And I love my family and we're going to be who we are. But one consequence of that is you ask so many more questions, because if people are telling you, oh, your family is bad, then you're well, why do you think that? Why are they bad? Why are you right? Why am I wrong? And you just question everything a lot more than I think normal teens do, and that's just a huge benefit in life.
Great. I'm going to move on to the audience questions. I'm going to start off with the ones I see that we already have. So Kimberly asked, how do you respond to the question of who is your real mother/parent, and does the question bother you? I'm going to start off by answering this one because I've had that happen so many times. So many people come up and ask me oh, which one's your real mom? And more often than not, I could very well answer it in a mean way or sarcastically, but I'll usually just say, oh, they're both my real moms, but Jane is my biological mom. And kind of they get the point, because as soon as you make the distinction between the two, they immediately know where they went wrong. Usually they'll apologize, and I don't tend to make a massive deal about it, but I do make sure that they understand the distinction. Does anyone else have anything to say to that question?
Yeah. I actually like to tag along to that. It's Jordan again. And I get this question a lot because both of my parents, neither one of them are biological to me. They're both my adoptive parents. But when asked, yes, it does bother me. It bothers me a lot. And I respond pretty educational, just, letting them know that my biological father was, never in my life, and my biological mother died when I was 11. I think education is pretty much key when questioned with ignorance sometimes. And so, yeah, but yes, it does bother me.
So this is Lucas again, and this is kind of just a small reiteration of what Sydney just said. But instead of saying, who's your real parent, referring to your mother's, I often get it, do you know your real father? And it's not, when people think real, they think biological, and I think we often have a different definition of what a real parent is. So I usually explain to them that, oh, my biological father is so-and-so, but my real parents are the ones who took care of me for 17 years.
Okay, I think unless anyone else had anything to tag along to that, I feel like it's pretty answered. The next question is from Logan, and so it says, I am a parent of 4 kids, age 25 to 40, and started transitioning from female to male last year. How do you handle title or what you want, or what you call your parents? My son still wants to call me mom, which I'm okay with, but will be weird out in public calling what appears to be his dad his mom. Does anyone have any answers to this? I feel like, Jordan, you might with the pronouns.
Oh, Sydney, you know me so well. Hey, it's Jordan, everyone, again. Well, Logan, so kids, they don't like change much often. Again, no one really likes change. If you think that it's weird that they'll be calling you mom instead of dad, just come up with something neutral. But you have to talk to your kid about it. It's something that's really important. It has to have, open communication. It can't just be like, well, I want you to call me this, this, and this. you are going to call me this. It has to be more like, okay, well, this is where I'm comfortable. What are you comfortable with? What can we look in the middle? Yeah. And communication is key. Coming to a conclusion where you're both comfortable is also key.
I agree with Jordan. I totally think that communication is the most important thing here. Discussing with your son what you both can kind of come to a conclusion on it is what's going to be the best. Anyone else have an answer for this? Okay, well then I'm going to move on to the next question. The next question comes from Troy, and the question says, I came out to my family/wife, 3 children, when my children were small. My now ex-wife brainwashed my children against me, saying that I was a perverted individual. Now that they are older, it is better, and they see me for my true self, married to my husband now. Was it difficult when your parents came out? So Joy and Glenn, I feel like this is definitely up your alley. So I'm going to let you answer it.
Yeah, our situation was very similar. My dad came out to my brother and I when we were 8. My parents were divorced. My mom is a little bit crazy and very religious, so she definitely tried the brainwashing thing. But as for was it difficult when my dad came out, I would say no, because there was such a change in him. Like he was how do I explain this? He was just so happy that it wasn't difficult at all, because I was like, oh, well, it's my dad and I love my dad and I want him to be happy, and that's all what it boiled down to. And even dealing with my mom being crazy and hearing like bad things about my dad at church and stuff, I mean, that definitely had like a negative effect on me, but all it did was just make me angry at those people. It never made me angry at my dad or like question my dad. It was always, I want my dad to be happy, and that's like what really matters. So it actually wasn't difficult at all. Glenn, what do you think?
I think I honestly couldn't have said it any better. You pretty much summed it up.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the next question from Suanne. The question said, at what age did you know your parents were gay or lesbians, etc.? For us, the Schweitzers, we knew since we were born, because we were, we weren't adopted. We were born from our mother Jane, and we have known since a very young age. Does anyone who has a different perspective like to answer this? Jordan or Donaldson?
Actually, could I reiterate a little bit?
Sure.
This is Lucas. At what age did you know your parents were gay or lesbian?
Lucas, we can't hear you. You hit your mute button.
Hello? Am I still muted? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh, okay. The question was, at what age did you know your parents were gay or lesbian? Just like Cindy just said, I think from a very young age you realize that you have 2 mothers, and you might observe that other families have a mother and a father. But I think a better question might be, when did you realize that your family was different than others? And I think it kind of goes back to my story that I was telling earlier about how when I was younger, everybody went to 2 moms, and it wasn't until I got a little bit older that people started telling me that I was different. And I think at that point, when other people started recognizing my family's different, is when I realized, oh, my family's different.
So would Joy or Glenn like to answer this question? Did you, or when did you find out, / did you know before your father came out?
Well, like I said, my dad came out to my sister and I when we were 8. And again, it wasn't a whole we were still kind of young. We didn't really know what it meant, but it wasn't like, oh my God, my dad is gay. This changes everything. You know, I'm going to have to do X, Y, Z to change my life because of him. It wasn't like that. It was like my love for my dad came first, and my respect for him as a father came first. So it wasn't, I have to like change my life because, you know, he came out as gay. It was, oh, my dad is gay. This isn't an issue. I still love him, and he's still my father. So it wasn't like a total life-changing experience. It wasn't something that I had to like completely adapt to. And honestly, now seeing him, how happy he is now, and seeing how much that it has changed him, we wish we could have known earlier, because it meant so much to us, and like his happiness and his love as a father meant so much to us that we wish he would have come out earlier so we could have done more.
Great answer. Yeah, I totally think, I totally agree. I'm going to move on to the next question from Shannon. Did you have friends that didn't invite you to parties or get invited to sleepovers because your parents were LGBT? So I never had specifically friends not inviting me places. I mean, I was kicked off of a softball team, so to an extent, I guess I wasn't at all allowed to be around my friends, but that was more because of a homophobic coach. I do think it is a consideration every time we have a party that, especially a sleepover, that people are going to be concerned about it, but I can't remember any specific instance where I deliberately wasn't invited because people thought I might be gay. Does anyone else have an answer? Anyone?
Hey, it's Jordan. So I don't think I've ever really been, really, you know, not invited to something. I think it's more where, I really just didn't have friends like that. You know, I think kids are old enough for, you know, apparent enough to make friends with people that they, that actually accept themselves and other people and you and your family. And I think if a friend doesn't accept your family enough, then they really weren't your friend, and it's really better off that I'm better off without them. At least that's what my mom's always told me for the year that I've known her.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you have a person that isn't a kind of your family, it's not like you would really want to go to that sleepover anyway. So the next question is from Juni Ada, I think. Sorry if I mispronounced that. What can we, godparents and supportive relatives, do to be more supportive of you? So for me specifically, I feel like in general, just, I mean, there's a sense of valuing the diversity, but there's also, if you treat me no different than anyone else, it's better. Like any other way that you would support your relative/godchildren should be the same way that you would support your relative/godchildren of LGBT parents. Does anyone else have an answer for this question?
Yeah, this is Joy. So for me and Glenn, my dad has 4 sisters, and when he came out, they basically cut off, all except for one, just completely cut off contact with him, and you know, told our cousins, like, don't talk to Joy and Glenn. It was just really, really bad. And so, like, as a relative, basically, just don't do that. Like, you know, just accept your family members and love them and love their kids. And, yeah, just, like, don't isolate them or cut them off. You know, just be there for them. That's really important.
Totally agree. So the next question from Thomas says, as one of the families has to deal with their parents' religion, are any of the speakers religious or have a faith that they follow? So I feel like my family is a bit interesting with this. Each of us kind of have our own different take on religion. My mom has opened it up. So we've been raised Unitarian Universalist, but as going with Unitarian Universalism, we have been each given the option to really follow whatever religion we want. So I kind of feel like I take inspiration from different religions, but there isn't a set in stone one that I exactly follow. Any of the other panelists, would you like to explain what faith that you follow or religion?
Hey, it's Jordan. Well, my mom is more of a Buddhist, and I grew up Christian. And then meeting my parents, I really wasn't much religious. I wasn't into it. My mom's really Buddhist. My dad doesn't follow any specific structured religion, and he kind of just flows with the wind. I have an adopted sister, and she just meditates. That's pretty much it. And I have created my own spirituality. I am not really religious. I don't believe in structured religion, but I am very spiritual. And I have created my own spirituality in order to stay in tune with myself and my alignment with how I feel I should do with the world and my mission.
Donaldson, would you like to talk about your faith?
Sure. This is Glenn again. So growing up with, like Joy said, my mother is a bit crazy. She's also a very devout Mormon, which, that's fine. That's her preference, whatever. But because of, like, the way we were raised, starting to being raised Mormon, and my dad coming out, that kind of made me question everything, because with the Mormon religion, being gay is a very big no-no. And so, like, that coming out influenced me to kind of start questioning everything about Mormonism and pretty much every religion in general. And I've kind of decided that I don't care for religion. I'm not against it. It's just not for me. So I'm very agnostic. But, if someone comes falling out of the sky and can show me that they can melt rock right before my eyes, then I'll believe them. But until that time, I'm good without religion.
This is Joy. I'm actually a little bit different from Glenn. Similar in the fact that growing up in that Mormon background kind of made me question all religions and just kind of ruined me, I guess, for strict strict rules and things like that. But actually now I go to St. Paul's Episcopal with my dad, and I mainly go there because it's a cathedral, so it's really pretty there, and I like the music, and I like the more spiritual aspect of it, kind of like Jordan said, being more spiritual versus being religious. So, I wouldn't necessarily call myself Episcopalian, but I like to go there for the atmosphere. So, yeah, like Jordan, not really religious, but definitely spiritual.
Great answers. So I think I'm going to move on to the next question. Kathy says, my stepchildren's mother cheated on their father with her current wife. What advice can I give to them to accept their stepmother more? I do think that that is a very difficult situation considering the cheating that was involved. I'm sure that the kids are to an extent concerned about that. Does anyone have an answer for her as to what advice she can give to help them be more accepting of their stepmother?
Hey, it's Jordan. Honestly, kids are going to feel their feelings, and their feelings are completely rational and completely true to themselves because their feelings are real, and that's how they feel. I think time might be the best situation. Just letting them know that, it'll be okay, and that it wasn't an okay thing to do, quite possibly, but it's okay now. I think time, really, because kids aren't going to feel what you want them to feel, and they won't think what you want them to think. They'll really just think what they want to. And I think time and maybe conversation to give you some insight on how they feel and how they perceive the whole situation?
I completely agree. This is Sydney again. I think in general, if you're going to, there's no way that you can force them to accept anything, regardless of what you'd wish they'd feel. There's still probably going to be the awkwardness of what they actually feel. So I think Jordan was great to answer with more time is what's necessary. I'm going to move on to the next question because I feel like Jordan answered that really well. Jennifer said, and I love this question because I've been there. It says, this weekend, my daughter's friend referred to herself as being so gay while chatting about her interest in something. My girlfriend and I were offended, but didn't want to cause a scene. In retrospect, I feel like we should have. Would you have been embarrassed as a child hearing your parents call your friend out and educate them? So I've had this. I've had this so many times where I've been in a situation where my mom, we were all sitting, I had like a group of friends over, we were sitting at my kitchen table, and my friend said that, talking about some kid at school, said that he was such a faggot. And of course, when my mom heard this, was not happy. She turned around and basically educated her, told her that's just as bad as saying the N-word, and explained why it was completely inappropriate. And it was very awkward. And at the time, I remembered thinking, this was when I was in middle school-ish age, I wasn't necessarily embarrassed because I agreed with what my mom was saying, but I didn't want to step up and do anything. And I now completely agree with it exactly what my mom did, but in the moment I'd hated it, but I still stand by with what she did. So I think not necessarily causing a scene, but education is important. It was completely inappropriate for my friend to have said that, and I think as time goes by, your children will respect you for it. But yeah, at the time, I was a bit embarrassed. Anyone else have anything to answer for this question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Joy.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Joy.
Lucas. Okay.
Um.
I'll make it quick. I'll make it short. Basically, I just want to say, like, you should definitely say something because whoever is, like, saying faggot or, like, oh, that's so gay, they might not even realize, like, especially you see this with high schoolers, like, they might not even realize that that is really offensive. So if you just educate them and say, hey, you shouldn't say that and here's why, like, that'll really help them out. And, yeah, just, like, definitely always say something. Lucas, what did you want to say?
Yeah, so I agree with Sydney and Joy. And I really love this question, too, because I think everybody on the panel has some story that they can tell about where this has happened to them. But the point that I would like to kind of make is we hear gay dropped as a derogatory term very often in high school. And something that I found was that I couldn't fight with every single person that said it because if I didn't pick my battles, then I would just start to become background noise. And if we really want to educate people, picking a fight with not even a fight, but calling somebody out every single time they say it, I feel like becomes repetitive. And not that our message isn't being communicated well when we call every single person out, but I think it becomes less meaningful. So my advice would be, yes, educate them the best you can, but also pick your battles.
If I could just tag along on this discussion, it's Jordan, by the way. I've never had a friend say something like that, something derogatory, but I have kind of been that friend. I had like this really big bad habit with the N-word simply because it was in the music I listened to, and it was just like an endearment term between me and my friends. And one day, my parents' friends are just like, hey, listen, this has got to stop. I'm going to tell you why. And it was just one of those things where we had a really big discussion about it, and it wasn't really a debate, more of like an informative discussion, and we just went back and forth for a while. So yes, do educate, because I think without having that discussion, I wouldn't have had some of the insight that I have now. I stopped using the N-word, BT dubs, just in case everyone's wondering. But yeah, have that conversation, call them out, because at the end of the day, they're gonna thank you for it.
Yeah, I completely agree. While it might be awkward in the situation, it should be said. So I'm going to move on to this one question from Rebecca, because I feel like it might answer several other people who have questions. Hers specifically is, we are a family of 2 moms and have 2 young boys. They were conceived via anonymous sperm donor, same donor, and will probably never find out his identity. They are still too young to ask about their dad, in quotation marks. If you were in this situation, what would be the best way for your moms to handle it / talk to you about it? I feel like I can answer this question pretty well. Lucas and Ian might have something to add on to it. We were told from a very young age. My mom always felt that it was better that we know, because we've been in a situation, so like earlier I said, we have 21 half-siblings. And we've found that the older and older that a person is told about the half-sibling / donor situation, the more screwed up they are because of it. We were told literally like 3-4 years old. It's just always been a part of our raising. And we always had this little pink binder in our house that had all of the sperm donors' information in it. My mom always had it there, saying if we ever wanted to go look at it, we could. And we now have these, this one half-sibling, well, actually 2, they're twins, who are being told at 17 that they have 21 half-siblings and a sperm donor. And it's completely, like, shell-shocking them, because it's never been a part of their life. They just always assumed that their father had ditched them from a very young age, because their mother just let them believe whatever they wanted to. So my advice is tell them from a very young age. Always have the information there. Always be willing to answer questions for them. You don't necessarily need to force it on them, but anything they want to know, you can let them know. Lucas or Ian, do you maybe have an answer for this too?
Yeah, one of the things a lot of people, if you make a big deal out of it, it doesn't really become a big deal. This type of thing is going to be a part of their lives. This is how they were born, and they will eventually figure it out. If you don't treat it like it's a huge deal that will completely change their lives, it won't.
Yeah, I agree with what the other two just said. Having exposure at a really young age, I think, really makes all the difference. And yeah, exactly what the other two just said. Just as soon as possible, I think, is the best answer.
So I'm going to move on to the next question quickly, because we're running out of time. John asked, do you find that because of your parents' lifestyles are creating enough exposure culturally? Do you feel that maybe you are supported about a gay person or the LGBT community? Anyone answers?
Hi, it's Joy. I feel like I'm definitely very exposed to life and have a good cultural background. For example, in San Diego, kind of the gay cultural hub, I guess, is Hillcrest, and so we go down there all the time, and there's a place called the LGBT Center, and they have a lot of events. They had a big party on June 26th, when gay marriage was legalized, and they also hold something called the Rainbow Prom, which is kind of like a prom for kids who don't feel like they can bring who they really want to bring to their own school's prom, and they can go to the center's prom, and we take pictures and stuff there, and we're just very involved in the community here, and have a lot of friends of my dad's who are gay, and even friends up in LA that we visit a lot, and I feel like we're very exposed, definitely, and I love it.
This is Sydney again. I feel like at least my family has been really a part of the LGBTQ community, and I do feel like I've met a large variety of different sorts of people. It's given me a better idea of what the world's actually like because I do live in a very conservative area. It's pretty much entirely white and Christian, so I feel like I have the rural white Christian side of things, and yeah, I do think being part of this family has opened me up to meeting more different people. So I'll go on to Samantha's question. Do you resent having a different type of family, i.e. average, or is it okay in the big picture? I definitely think that having a different sort of family is super beneficial, and definitely don't resent it at all. Would anyone else like to talk about this?
Yeah, it's Joy. Plain and simple, I love my family, and I love that it's different, and I wouldn't change anything about it.
This is Glenn. Again, what Joy said, having a parent who's gay has definitely really opened me up to many perspectives of like how to look at people, how to look at society as a whole. And honestly, I'm very thankful for that perspective. I'm very thankful that I can see things from many different ways, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
Yeah, I think Glenn is exactly what I was just about to say, was that I didn't realize how pervasive having a gay family has been in my life, from things like I've become politically adept because I've watched the fight for marriage equality for the past decade. I understand the political system better now because of that, and like Glenn just said, we really understand people better. Like, we realize people shouldn't be identified based on just their things like sexual orientation, gender, anything along those lines, because we've seen how different people can actually be better than average people. I know that's a really bad way of phrasing it, but it's along those lines.
Yeah, I think this is a great way to finish this off. I'm sorry, Jennifer, I just sent you individually contact information, but I'm going to send everyone my email because that has to be the last question. I think, so Sydney Schweitzer at Gmail. If anyone would like to email me with any questions, or if you'd like contact information from any of the others, I'm sure they can send in their stuff as well. Thank you, everyone. So I'm going to move on to our video. We, Schweitzers and Jordan, have been part of a documentary about having different, in quotation, different LGBTQ families. The Indiegogo campaign is linked right here, and the whole idea of this documentary is basically that having different sorts of families is just as okay as having normal families, and we're really not that different. We're families like yours. So I'm going to go into the video.
We live in a world of joy and fear and search for meaning in the seeming disorder of the world. We discover the truest guideline to our quest when we realize love in all its magnitude. Love is the eternal force of life.
6 years ago, I thought my life was over. I was kind of like a lost soul, And today, what is important for me are my children.
And I never heard the clock ticking, and then the damn thing exploded. She immediately told an assistant, please go get the doctor. Go get the doctor now. And she's going on and on. I'm like, no, what's that? And we're looking at each other like, there's something else there.
You can think about having two. 3 was scary, but at the same time, unbelievable.
We have this baby and we're kind of like, oh my gosh, that we're have to take care of. Like, what do we do?
Right.
How are we gonna do this? And
I remember he grabbed my hand so hard, and I felt this incredible connection.
I knew growing up in a fundamental independent Baptist church that if I came out as gay, I had the chance of losing everything.
A lot of people default to whatever the religion says. I know people whose heart says one thing and their religion says another thing, and it puts them in a terrible place of tension.
This is true love. This is my life partner. This is the person I want to spend the rest of my life.
I had a grown man scream in my ear through a megaphone about how I was going to hell simply because of the family I was born into.
And it scares me that there's people out there with these opinions who people are actually listening to. They understand how my family works and how we're all perverts and how the kids are dysfunctional.
What we really need is to change people's hearts. And the way you do that is through education and through exposure.
They need to come talk to me and need to hear my perspective and need to know how I was raised. Because in many ways, my family is no different from any others.
And once again, this is Daniel Lawrence Smith, Associate Director of Training here at Out and Equal. What an amazing panel and such great questions coming in from all the participants. So many, in fact, that we weren't able to get to all of them. We'll try to summarize some of those questions in the follow-up to this and definitely include those email links and the links to that video. Sydney, Glenn, Lucas, Jordan, Joy, and Ian, we can't thank you enough for your participation today, sharing your personal stories and insights into the lives of an LGBT family. So thank you all so much for that. A reminder that this call has been recorded and will be available as a digital resource after the session. One more reminder that the Out and Equal Workplace Summit will be in Orlando, Florida, October 4th through 7th. For more information, you can visit us online at outandequal.org/events/summit, and we hope to see all of you there. Again, thank you so much for your participation today. There will be a brief survey at the end of the call, and your feedback is important to us, so please fill that out so we can be informed on what was of interest to you in today's session and also help inform future sessions. Our next virtual summit will be Wells Fargo and Marriott, a recent case study in LGBT inclusive marketing, and you can register for all of those on our website at www.outandequal.org. Again, on behalf of Out and Equal, this is Daniel Lawrence Smith. I thank you all for your time and have a great day.